He was an ordinary pilot until he found himself in a game where a single flight pays more than a lifetime of work. But the deeper he went, the more people wanted to use him. This is the movie American Made. In 1978, working as a commercial airline pilot, Barry Seal feels like he is living the exact same day over and over again. He changes cities, but sees no difference between them, and has long since stopped enjoying his job. The only thing that somehow compensates for this monotony is stability and extra income from illegally smuggling Cuban cigars. After another flight, upon receiving an envelope of cash for the delivered goods, he suddenly notices an unfamiliar man examining the boxes of cigars. The man lets him know that he is aware of his side hustle, but considers it small change that the Central Intelligence Agency can turn a blind eye to. Agent Schaefer offers Barry an off-the-books job. He must perform reconnaissance flights over Latin America. To do this, he needs to leave his current job and set up a private aviation business under the cover of a company that will give him freedom of movement and allow him to fly wherever necessary while photographing bases and rebels. The agent warns Barry that no one should know about this, including his wife. Lucy does not understand how her husband can give up a stable job for a business she is hearing about for the first time, and begs him to think it through. However, soon after, Barry simply walks off the plane just minutes before takeoff, making his choice final. He gets to work and begins flying over territories controlled by rebels. The new gig quickly captivates him, because instead of the monotonous flights of commercial aviation, every takeoff now turns into a real adventure. Working for the agency, he supplies management with photographs that spark growing interest, and Schaefer remains pleased with the results. Over time, trust in him grows, and he is assigned even more serious tasks. He begins delivering money to Panamanian Colonel Manuel Noriega, who in return hands over information about communists in the region to the Americans. However, one of his trips to Colombia changes everything. Before takeoff, armed men pull up to him and insistently ask him to come with them. That is how he ends up at the house of Jorge Ochoa, who is well aware of his work, though it does not interest him. He explains that they have encountered serious problems delivering cocaine to the States, and offers Barry a deal where he will receive $2,000 for every kilogram transported. The main difficulty remains the airstrip hidden in the jungle. It is far too short and dangerous, where several pilots have already crashed. Barry is not sure he can get the plane into the air either, but Pablo Escobar emphasizes that they have no other options, and he will have to work with what they have. Realizing he has virtually no choice, Barry agrees, but sets his own condition. He will not land in Miami, where he would almost certainly be detained, and will instead drop the cargo over Louisiana, where Ochoa's men will pick it up. He limits the volume of goods to 200 kilograms and rolls the plane back to the absolute edge of the airstrip, trying to use every single meter. Having completed his preparations, he starts the engines while his new partners place bets on whether he can even get off the ground. The plane barely detaches from the earth, and literally plowing through the tree canopies, gets on course. Upon reaching Louisiana, Barry flies at an extremely low altitude, staying close to the oil platforms. This risky maneuver works, as he is mistaken for a worker's helicopter on radar. Reaching the drop point, he successfully disposes of the cargo, which is already awaited by Ochoa's men. They decide to celebrate the successful operation, but the fun is cut short by the arrival of the police and the military. Everyone is detained, but soon Ochoa, Later, and Escobar walk free, while Barry remains in custody. Schaefer comes for him and lets him know he is aware of his illegal activities. He warns of an impending search of his house, but offers a way out. Barry can avoid severe consequences if he agrees to work for the agency in Nicaragua. Since the search cannot be canceled, he has to urgently gather his family and leave his home. Together with Lucy, they relocate to the small town of Mina, where Barry shows her their new home and steps out to talk with Schaefer. Schaefer drives him to an airfield registered in his name and explains that everything on the property now belongs to him, including the bag of money he received from Ochoa. From now on, Barry will have to supply weapons to the Contras, anti-government forces in Nicaragua, and he must operate in complete secrecy, avoiding the attention of both federal agencies and the military. Naturally, moving to such a backwater town does not please Lucy, who complains about the lack of basic necessities. But Barry assures her that she will no longer want for anything, and admits for the first time that he works for the agency. The rebels he begins supplying with weapons are needed by the agency to fight communists. But the very first flight reveals that the rebels are a bunch of thieves, as upon landing they take his glasses and shoes. The next time, Barry acts smarter, distracting them with gifts and only then unloading the weapons. Ochoa arrives and introduces him to Adolfo Calero, who collaborates with the United States and aims to overthrow the communist regime. He offers Barry a new scheme. Barry must deliver weapons to Colombia for the Medellin Cartel, pick up cocaine from them, and transport it to Nicaragua, from where the rebels will ship the goods to Miami by water. Now Barry realizes that for many of them, the war is merely a cover, and the main goal is money. Yet he agrees anyway and gets to work. He loads weapons in Mina, bypasses checkpoints using routes provided by Schaefer, and heads to the cartel's lair in Medellin, where he picks up a shipment of drugs. Then he flies to the rebel camp, from where the goods travel on to the United States, while he himself, so as not to return empty-handed, takes an additional batch, refuels in Panama, where the bribed Noriega covers for him, and drops the cargo in the swamps of Louisiana. The scale of the operation grows, and Barry can no longer handle it alone, so he recruits several more pilots who begin working for him. After one of the flights, Schaefer appears and informs him that a training camp will be built on property owned by Barry, to which the rebels will need to be transported. He cannot refuse and takes on the task, transporting Nicaraguans to the United States, although some of them immediately flee to try and start a new life as illegal immigrants. At the same time, his main business continues to gain momentum, bringing in even more money. The agency continues to turn a blind eye to his activities as long as he carries out their assignments, while the vast property with the airfield and the camp formally remains registered under his name, permanently turning him into the central figure of the entire operation. 1982 becomes a stage of even greater expansion for Barry's business, who by this point effectively commands his own squadron, simultaneously executing tasks for the agency and working for the Medellin Cartel. The flow of money becomes so massive that he is forced to set up front companies to launder tens of millions of dollars. Yet even this proves insufficient, and he begins hiding cash and gold wherever he can, to the point of burying them right on his home's grounds. Over time, he even brings Lucy to Colombia to introduce her to his partners, and only then does she truly grasp the scale of what is happening. Soon, her brother JB appears on their doorstep, having lost his job and hoping for help. So Barry takes him under his wing. Money keeps pouring in, and he increasingly faces an absurd problem. There is simply too much of it, and he can no longer find places to hide it, causing wads of cash to lie around literally everywhere. Soon after, JB shows up in a new car and admits he found money in the shed, illustrating just how far out of control the situation has gotten. However, things cannot go on like this for long, and federal agencies begin noticing strange activity in a small town in Louisiana, where huge amounts of cash suddenly start appearing. Border Control Services tighten security and acquire aircraft that begin severely interfering with Barry's operations. During one of his flights, he is forced to make an emergency landing in a small town near Mina. He loses the cargo, but manages to escape and evade arrest. After this, it becomes clear that the situation is rapidly deteriorating, and even people at the agency begin to realize just how close everything has come to being exposed. Soon after, the Medellin Cartel declares war on the government of Colombia, and Ochoa, along with Escobar, move to Nicaragua, from where Barry must now continue his transport runs. While he discusses new supply routes, JB, having completely lost control over himself due to the money, gets caught by the sheriff with a suitcase full of cash, and soon federal agents appear in town. Upon returning, Barry demands his silence and promises to get him out of jail, but Ochoa states that he will take care of this problem himself. Barry manages to release JB on bail, but it becomes obvious that he now poses a threat, as he faces a severe prison sentence and could start talking at any moment. Realizing this, Barry hands him money and documents, insisting on an urgent departure from the country. Understanding that he has no choice, the guy gets into his car and insults Barry's family before leaving. As promised, Ochoa took care of JB, leaving Barry with no choice but to hide the car in the woods. Problems are mounting for the agency as well, when it comes to light that the operation with the rebels has effectively failed. A significant portion of the weapons intended for Nicaragua ends up in Colombia, while the fighters transported to the states scatter, having no intention of going back. As a result, the decision is made to shut down the camp, which means Barry loses his patron. While Schaefer hastily disposes of documents capable of linking the agency to Barry, Barry, along with his crew, attempts to clear the hangar of drugs and weapons, but fails to do so in time. Soon, representatives from several agencies at once, the police, the Department of Justice, and federal agents, burst into the hangar. He is brought before Attorney General Dana Sabota, who promises to put him away for life. However, in the middle of their conversation, she is interrupted by an urgent call from the governor of the state. Asking everyone to step out, she remains alone, while in the hallway, Barry, without losing his composure, ironically offers a Cadillac to each of the agents, hinting that he will be released soon anyway. His words provoke only mockery, but just a few moments later, the situation changes when the prosecutor steps out and orders his handcuffs to be removed, making it clear that she will continue to pursue him. He is met by unfamiliar men, and unexpectedly for himself, Barry finds himself inside the White House. There, he becomes a witness to a dispute between the head of the Drug Enforcement Administration and Colonel Oliver North, one of Ronald Reagan's closest aides. Both sides agree on one thing: the Medellin Cartel must be destroyed, which means Barry must continue doing what he did before, only now working directly for the White House. They explain to him that hidden cameras will be installed on the plane, and his task is to record everyone involved in supplying cocaine from Colombia to the States. There is no choice. Either he agrees, or he spends decades behind bars. Realizing he has no alternative, Barry takes to the air once again and heads to Nicaragua. At the base, he is received warily, but the situation changes with the arrival of Ochoa. He warns that Escobar no longer trusts anyone, but Barry manages to convince him of his loyalty. Soon the loading begins, and during this time, Pitt discreetly captures what is happening on camera, executing the assignment for the White House. A few days later, Reagan declares that the Nicaraguan authorities are involved in drug trafficking, and news broadcasts air the photographs taken during the operation, effectively exposing Barry. His handler admits that these materials were not supposed to be broadcast, making it obvious that the cartel will now launch a hunt for him. However, the federal agencies reach him first, finding the money he had hidden. By law, they cannot seize the jewelry worn by Lucy, so Barry asks her to leave for her parents' house, taking everything she can carry on her person. Realizing that the danger is only growing, he sends his family to Baton Rouge and prepares for his inevitable arrest, hoping that prison will offer him at least some protection. The court, despite Dana Sabota's efforts, hands down an unexpectedly lenient sentence: 1,000 hours of community service, allowing him to remain free. Not fully believing what is happening, Barry begins recording his memories on tape, after which he shifts into a new reality where every single day turns into a wait for the blow to fall. He constantly changes motels, fearing the cartel's revenge, checks his car every morning while remembering the fate of JB, and lives in a state of continuous tension. By day, he records his story, and in the evenings he serves out his punishment at the Salvation Army shelter, and several months pass this way. But one evening, the cartel finds him after all, and it becomes clear that escaping the past is not so simple. Barry Seal played a dangerous game, maneuvering between the CIA, the White House, and the Medellin Cartel. But in a world where everyone uses everyone, he was just a disposable pawn who paid the ultimate price.